What's up, YouTube? We back with another video, baby, and today is day 14 of 90. We 2 weeks in with our 520 push-ups a night. You feel me? Our little routine that we be doing every night. Let's lock in, man. Turn our podcast on. Get right straight to business.
All of a sudden, it seemed to have gone
30.
to his head. Started running around with a fast company, staying out late at night, drinking too much liquor, paying too much attention to everything except his job. What in the world would you do in the case of that kind? I'm anxious to know. This young man said, Mr. Carnegie, I know you're going to fire me, so you might just as well start in and get it over with. Mr. Carnegie said, oh no. If I'd wanted to fire you, I wouldn't have given you a nice dinner and I wouldn't have brought you out to my house. So I could have done that down at the office. No, I'm not going to fire you.
29.
I'm just going to have you ask yourself a question and see whether or not you're not about in a position to fire yourself. Maybe you are. Maybe you're closer to it than you realize. That man right about faced and did become one of Mr. Carnegie's mastermind group and did become a millionaire later on. It absolutely saved him from himself. Mr. Carney's tactfulness was out of this world. He knew how to handle men. He knew how to get them to examine themselves. It doesn't do much good for me to examine you, but it might do a lot of good if you examined yourself in connection with your faults and in connection with your virtues.
28.
Self-analysis is one of the most important forms of personal initiative that you can possibly engage in. Self-analysis. I never let a day go by that I don't examine myself to see where I've fallen down, to where I'm weak, where I can make improvements, what I could do to render more service and better service. Lord, I examine myself every day. And believe you me, this has been going on for a great number of years. And even today, I can always find some place where I can improve, where I can do something better or something more. It's a very healthy form of personal initiative, I'll assure you, and it's very interesting, too.
27.
Because you finally get down to where you'll be honest with yourself. Do you have any idea how many people there are who are dishonest with themselves? It's the worst form of dishonesty that I know anything about at all. Creating alibis in your own mind to support your acts and your deeds and your thoughts, instead of examining yourself and finding out where you're weak and then bridging those weaknesses or getting somebody in your mastermind alliance to bridge them for you. Now that's a personal initiative too, and it's the kind of personal initiative that most people won't engage in because it involves self-analysis and self-criticism. But which would you rather have? Would you rather have an outsider criticize you and point out your faults, or would you rather criticize yourself and find them?
Yourself.
Why? Well, you can be kind of confidential about it. You don't have to publicize these weaknesses that you find out, and you can get them corrected before anybody else finds out about them if you do a good job. But if you wait until somebody else has to call them to your attention, then they become public property, don't they?
25.
And they may embarrass you. They may hurt your pride. They may even cause you to build up an inferiority complex if you wait for the other fellow to have to point out your weaknesses to you. That's personal initiative too, finding out what your weak spots are, what it is that causes you to be disliked by other people, why it is you're not getting ahead as well as some of the other people, and where you know you've got just as much brains or even more than they have. Another marvelous place to take the personal initiative is to compare yourself with other people who are succeeding beyond your success.
24.
Make comparisons and analyses and to see what it is they have that you don't have. You'll be surprised to find out how much you can learn from the other fellow. Maybe the fellow you don't like very well either. You can learn something from him. If he's ahead of you, if he's doing better than you are, believe you me, you can always learn something from the man who's doing better than you're doing. Sometimes you can learn something from the fellow who's not doing as well as you're doing too. It works both ways. You may find out why he's not doing as well. Number 15, the habit of listening much and talking only when necessary. I wonder how many of you listen more than you talk. Would you give me your hands? And I've never yet heard of anybody learning anything while he's talking. Except that maybe he might learn to not talk so much. Well, now this seems kind of funny, but it's not funny. It's very serious.
22.
the vast majority of people do a lot more talking than they do listening, and they seem dead bent on getting the other fellow told off instead of listening to see what the other fellow has to say that they might profit by.
Listen more than you talk.
Listening much and talking when necessary. Think first and talk last. And 16, a well-developed sense of observation of details. How many of you feel that you have a keen sense of observation of details? How many of you feel that you could walk down State Street here or any of these streets in front of Marshall Field,
21.
just casually walk by, and then after you got at the end of the block, give a very accurate description of everything you saw in the window? Think you could do that? I once belonged to a class in Philadelphia directed by a man who was teaching us the importance of observation of small details, because he said it was the little details that made up the successes and the failures of life, not the big ones at all, the little ones. The ones we usually pass aside as not being important or that we don't even observe.
20.
And as a part of our training, he took us out of the hall and took us down the street 1 block, crossed over the street, came up 1 block, and back into the hall. And in doing so, we passed about 10 stores, one of which was a hardware store. And in that hardware store window, I would say there was easily 500 articles. And he asked each one of us to take a pad, a paper, and a pencil along. Now, mind you, giving us a crutch for our memory.
19.
And to put down the things that we saw as we passed along that we thought were important. And guess how many was the greatest number of things that any of us put down, going 2 blocks, 1 block down this way, across and up the other side, and covering at least 20 stores. Guess how many was the greatest number of things that any of us saw? 20. You'll be surprised. The greatest number of things that anybody had down was 56.
18.
When this man came back, he didn't have any paper. No pencil. He listed 746. And described each one of them and told what window it was in and what part of the window it was in. I didn't accept it. I had to go down after the class was over and backtracked him and checked it, and he was absolutely 100% accurate. In other words, he had trained himself to observe details, not just a few of them, but all of them.
17.
And believe you me, a good executive, a good leader, a good anything is a person who observes all the things that are happening around him, the good things and the bad things, the positives and the negatives. He doesn't just happen to notice those things that interest him. He notices everything that may interest him or may affect his interest.
16.
Attention to details. Number 18, the capacity to stand criticism without resentment. How many of you can do that? Come on, give me your hands. Now I'm going to test you another way. How many of you invite criticism that is friendly criticism from other people? How many of you invite it? You're overlooking a bet there, my friends. Those of you who didn't vote, you're overlooking a big bet.
15.
Because one of the finest things that could possibly happen is to have a regular source of friendly criticism of the thing that you're doing in life, that thing that constitutes your major purpose at least. I invite it because the things that you're doing daily that may offend other people, you think they're all right or you wouldn't be doing them. And you're going to keep on doing them if somebody doesn't call them to your attention. Is that right? So you need a source of friendly criticism. It's one of the most marvelous things in the world. I'm not talking about these people who don't like you and criticize you just because they don't like you. That's no good. I wouldn't let that have any effect on me whatsoever. And on the other hand, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the person who gives me friendly criticism just because he loves me. You know, you can do yourself just as much damage that way. I've heard it said out in Hollywood that those stars out there, when they begin to believe their press agents, and sometimes they do, they're just about through.
13.
That's right. Well, you need to have the privilege, ladies and gentlemen, of looking at yourselves through the eyes of other people. You need that privilege. Yeah, we all need it. Because I'll assure you, when you walk down the street, You don't look the same to the other fellow that sees you as you think you look to yourself. And when you open your mouth and speak in conversation or
12.
otherwise, you don't, what registers in the other man's mind is not always what you think is registering at all. You need criticism. You need analysis. You need people to point out to you changes that you ought to make, because we all have to make changes as we go along. If we didn't, we wouldn't grow.
11.
But did you know that the majority of people resent any kind of suggestion or criticism whatsoever that differs from what they're doing? Anything at all that would change their way of doing things, they resent it. And consequently, they do themselves great damage by resenting. Friendly criticism.
10.
Someone has said that there's no such thing as constructive criticism. I can't buy that. I think there is such a thing as constructive criticism. I think it's wonderful. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Just remember that no matter what you're doing, who you are, how well you do it, you'll never get 100% approval from the crowd. Don't expect it. And don't be disturbed too much if you don't get it.
4 sets of 25 left.
Loyalty, number 20, loyalty to all to whom
First set.
loyalty is due. Loyalty comes at the top of the list in my book of rules of qualifications of people that I want to be associated with. If you don't have loyalty to the people that have a right to your loyalty, you don't have anything. No matter how brilliant you are, how sharp or smart, how well educated, the smarter you are, the more dangerous you may be. If you don't have loyalty, if you can't be loyal to the people that have a right to your loyalty.
Second set.
How many of you are loyal to the people that you're supposed to be? Well, that's grand. That's grand. I don't mean to make any of you tell lies, and I'm sure you wouldn't. But I just wanted to check up and see, when you start voting on something, before you do it, usually speaking, you stop to think, well, now, do I have loyalty? Do I? And if you don't have it, why, you think of the person in connection with which you don't have that loyalty, and you decide maybe to do something about it. Now, I have loyalty to people that I don't even like, but I do have a sense of obligation to them if I'm related to them in business or profession.
All right. We got 50 reps left on the table, baby. If you ain't feeling too good, you're a little bit fatigued, go ahead, hit 5 sets of 10. You feeling immaculate, hit that 50 straight if you got it. And if you stick it to the routine, man, we got 2 sets of 25 left. Let's wrap up day 14, baby. 2 weeks in.
Otherwise, or in the family
There's
circle,
it.
there are a few people there that I don't particularly like. But I'm loyal to them because I have that obligation. If they want to be loyal to me, that's all right. If they don't, that's their misfortune, not mine. I have the privilege of being loyal, and I'm going to live up to that privilege because of the values I get out of it, because I have to live with this fellow. I have to sleep with him. I have to look in the mirror every morning and shave his face. I have to give him a bath every once in a while. And, you know, I have to be on good terms with him. You can't live with a fellow that closely and not be on good terms with him.
Last 25, bring it home.
To thine own self be true, and it must follow as night to day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. And Shakespeare never wrote anything more beautiful and more philosophical than that. To your own self be true. Be loyal to yourself. Because you have to live with self. And if you...
All right, baby. Day 14 of 90 in the books. 2 weeks in. Another 520 push-ups, baby. Let's finish strong. Boom out.